Welcome back, everybody, to Outside the Beltway Radio. My name is Alan. I'm going to be your host with the most today. I just want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good night to everybody who's listening, depending on where you are in the world. Today's subject is going to be about Russia. I believe that that's an important issue of the day right now. So as I'm sitting here talking to you guys, Russia has already invaded Ukraine, taken over most of the military bases in the Crimea Peninsula, and are doing so under the guise of cultural background, I should say. He's claiming that he's protecting Russians that live in Ukraine from Ukrainians. And he's also claiming that the now disposed former Ukrainian president had asked for his help. But guess what? The people disposed him, and he has political asylum in Russia now. Now, for all the work that this country had put into ending the Cold War in the 80s, or I should say 70s and 80s, all the money we spent, now in 2014, is becoming all for naught. And the sad part is we no longer have the hawks that we used to have in the Senate or in the House of Representatives, and definitely not in the presidency. We don't have the backbone that we used to have anymore. Remember the Bay of Pigs? What did John F. Kennedy do? He called Khrushchev's bluff and sent a naval force down to blockade Cuba. Because Russia was sending nuclear arms down to Cuba. Now, we already backed out of a deal to put ballistic missiles in Turkey. So right now we have no cards to play. I'm hearing all these political pundits coming out and saying, yeah, we need to freeze assets in America of the Russian oligarchs, prevent travel for them, putting pressure on them so they will in turn put pressure on Putin. But even if we did that, that takes time, right? There's Russian troops on the ground in the Crimea Peninsula as we speak. That's the MO of this administration. Let's talk about it. Let's draw a red line and let everybody cross it and do nothing about it. It happened in Benghazi, happened in Syria, and now it's going to happen in Ukraine. We put ourselves in this position already. We did it to ourselves. Now, in my opinion, and I bet the population of America disagrees with me, at least the majority, in my opinion, we need to show some military force. Send some planes over to Poland. Run military exercises right there on the front of their face so they know we're there. Now, I'm not calling for any actual commitment to a military action, going to war or such, but we need to show some kind of force. We can't just talk our way out of this anymore. We're America. We're the shining city on the hill. That was just a reference to Ronald Reagan in one of his many inspirational speeches. And just imagine what Ronald Reagan is thinking up in heaven right now, or down in his grave. He is rolling over in that grave right now. That was a man with a backbone, as well as John F. Kennedy. Now, I know this nation is tired of war. We are war weary. We've been to war since 2001. But this is a far greater threat in the geopolitical atmosphere than the Middle East. If we do nothing now, what does that tell Iran? What does that tell North Korea? What does that tell the feckless EU? Because the EU's mentality is we've got the big bag of America to back us up. And guess what? We're not there anymore. That's not our mentality any longer. That's why the leaders of the European Union should be shaking in their boots right now. Now, I know there's some serious ties to Russia as far as the European nations go, but they are under the foothold of Russia because they supply their energy. 13 pipelines going through Ukraine to feed the energy needs of Europe. And that was set up over the last 15, 20 years. Just building for political leverage. Because look what he's doing now. He's actually invading a sovereign nation. And there's nothing anybody will do about it. Now, in my opinion, the Ukrainians need to fight for all it's worth. This is a true fight for freedom. And we, as the American public, need to support them. Regardless of being war weary. Now, this country doesn't need another Cold War. Because Russia is trying to gain political status to get them back up on that superpower level. We knocked them off that pedestal and became the only superpower for 20 years. But for anybody out there that thought that Russia was just going to slide down and just be that secondary power, you people are just unrealistic. But the mistake the Russian people made was to elect a leader into power with ties to the old Soviet Union, which is exactly what Vladimir Putin is. An ex-KGB agent who's now been in power for over a decade. All he's done is change his title. Prime Minister, President, Prime Minister. Or excuse me, President, Prime Minister, President. And he's not going to give up the power. Russia is no longer a democracy like it was supposed to be after the Soviet Union fell. It is now an autocracy governed by an autocrat with a hunger for power. and who's shrewd politically, I must say. But in my opinion, this administration and even the previous administration gave too much credence to the Russians. Like George W. Bush, whom I love still, he was best friends with this Vladimir Putin. Let's invite him out to the ranch. That was the beginning of the mistakes this country has made in regards to our relationship with Russia. Russia has lulled the giant to sleep. And we're sleeping right now, guys. But we need to wake up. We need to show some force in Eastern Europe without conflict, but letting them know that we mean business. And letting our allies know that we mean business. In my opinion, we have lost so much standing in the world that people don't look to us anymore to be the guiding light that we should be. We are truly the only superpower left in the world, and we need to keep it that way for our own interests. So we need to stop Russia from trying to expand once again and to create the big pink blot on the map that was once the Soviet Union. So folks, call your congressmen, call your senators, leave a message at the White House. Let them know that we cannot stand by and be idle against Russia. Let's speak our voices. We need to do that for the best interest of this country. Now, I'm old enough to where I lived through the end of the Cold War. But for the younger generation that never had to get under a desk for a nuclear drill, to never know the fear that you always had in the back of your head when we were going through the Cold War, we need to let those people and those kids know, or young adults and kids know, how that really felt and why we never want to go there again. We need to stay the only superpower there is. And that's the only right answer, in my opinion. Now, if you agree with me, let me know. A-Line Outside the Beltway Radio, or tweet me at Outside the Beltway or OTB Radio. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Remember, call your congressmen, call your senators. Let them know how you feel, especially the older generations, guys. With that said, I'd like to bid you adieu. Good morning, good afternoon, good night to all you guys out there. Hope you enjoyed the show. This show was on a whim, so I hope it's not boring. I had to do it because this is a serious issue. All right, have a good evening.